Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Namaste. And just as a reminder, we're studying Swami Prabhavananda's collection of talks published under the title Realizing God. We're in the middle of, or toward the late middle of the talk on yoga. Swami was very fond of Patanjali and thought that Patanjali's Yoga Sutras were very useful and applicable to Westerners. Of course, they were. It's a given that they're useful to those who have it as their birthright. So he wrote a book, How to Know God, which is his interpretation, translation, and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And this talk is a summary. It's simply titled Yoga. So before we begin, we've been studying along on Saturdays for a while on this talk. Have you been left with any questions or comments or anything you'd like to bring up before we begin reading and commenting on what the Swami said this morning? Anything at all from anyone? All right, then. We start with one of these promises that is made by Swami Prabhavananda. And he knew whereof he spoke, not only from his own experience and being in the presence of the direct disciples and other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother, but also because of his many years of experience. He came to the United States in 1925, and he started the Vedanta Society of Southern California, although not by that name, in 1929. And he lived until July 4th, 1976, very deliberately leaving the body on the bicentennial of this country, not just as an homage to this country, but also to Swami Vivekananda, who left his body deliberately on July 4th. So the Swami knew Americans and Westerners very well. And here's how he opens today's reading with this promise. Whenever you are ready, you will find that God will clear your path. Whenever you are ready, you will find that God will clear your path. Now, what it means to be ready is different for each one of us. Each of us is unique, but it has to do with that clarity of vision and purity of heart that are necessary for spiritual progress. And when you have done the spiritual practice necessary to have that clarity of mind and purity of heart, whenever you are ready, you will find that God will clear your path. The way forward will become more evident, and your ability to follow it will become stronger. But the Swami gives just this little caveat, this little warning. But have divine discontent. If you have some vision or a little light or hear some music or sound, and you think that you have become spiritual, that will not do. My master used to say, light, more light. More light. Is there any end to it? Meaning that each of these gifts that were given along the path, these little milestones, they're significant, but they are not anywhere near the end. So the Swami has been going through the limbs of yoga as defined by Patanjali, and he covered the first two, the yamas and the niyamas. And now he says the third limb of yoga is posture. There is only one important condition for proper posture: to be seated in a position which is firm but relaxed. In the Gita we find his posture must be motionless, with the body, head, and neck erect. In the Vedanta aphorisms, Vyasa points out, worship is possible in a sitting posture because this encourages meditation. The meditating posture is compared to the immovable earth. In other words, when your asana or posture, your seat, is firm, if you go into an ecstatic state, you won't fall over. And you may well go into an ecstatic state, so you won't fall over, and it's easy to remain in that posture for many minutes. The fourth limb is pranayama, which is generally translated as breathing exercises. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali also gives some breathing exercises, but they may be dangerous. Then again, he points out that pranayama means control of the prana. Prana cannot be explained in so many words, only expressed as energy in many ways. For instance, my speaking is the power of prana. My breathing is the power of prana. Digesting my food is the power of prana. And this power and this prana needs to be controlled. The practice of breathing exercises ultimately brings kumbhaka, or suspension of breath. It is important so that the spiritual energy may rise and you may become absorbed in the consciousness of God. But Patanjali again points out that stoppage of the breath, which is caused by concentration upon external or internal objects, is involuntary and natural. It is called, oh my goodness,
Sahaja pranayama.
Sahatya,
Sahaja pranayama.
Sahaja, which means easy or natural.
Yes.
Natural pranayama. It is involuntary and natural. It is called Sahaja pranayama, the easiest way to attain kumbhaka. Sri Ramakrishna gave the example of a housewife cleaning. When somebody comes and informs her that a neighbor has died, she continues her job saying, "Oh, that is too bad." But if somebody comes and tells her, "Your son died," there is a stoppage of breath. The mind is concentrated. The suggestion here is that you don't need to practice pranayama to achieve this stoppage of breath. You need to learn to concentrate the mind, and then the stoppage of the breath, or kumbhaka, happens spontaneously and involuntarily. That is the experience of many, including myself. And one of the ways that you can tell that you're progressing in concentration and progressing toward meditation is that your breath slows, and then in the beginning brief periods, it simply stops. Now you're not aware of it when it stops, you're aware of it when it begins again. Oh, I haven't been breathing. So there's no need to practice these breathing exercises, the Swami says. You simply learn to concentrate the mind, and pranayama, resulting in kumbhaka, happens easily and naturally. Sahaja pranayama. Are there any questions or comments about that? Okay. Some people wish to practice pranayama anyway. If you're going to do it, please do it under the guidance of a very qualified instructor, because there is danger of damage to your nervous system, to your chitta, to your mind stuff. So if there are no comments or questions, we'll just go on. So when you begin to feel the presence of God within you, there is suspension of breath. You will find that as you are practicing meditation or concentration, it is the breath that sometimes disturbs you. Breathing is associated with thoughts. Thoughts and breathing that prana goes together. It is the breathing that sometimes disturbs you. But gradually, as you concentrate, the breathing becomes rhythmical and then stops naturally. And you do not even know when it is stopped. Suddenly you find that you have not been breathing for some time. Sahaja pranayama. Easy, natural. And this is what Patanjali actually recommends. He gives some breathing exercises, but he says there's danger. And there is. There's no need for us as spiritual aspirants to have that accelerant of these advanced forms of pranayama. So one last time, anything that anyone wants to contribute or ask about this subject of pranayama, control of the prana.
I have a question.
Yes, dear.
Is it just certain types of pranayama exercises, or is it sort of a blanket thing that you think the Swami is saying about not
No,
doing?
the simple ones like closing one nostril and breathing and then closing the other and breathing. Doing that kind of thing briefly. Other simple pranayama exercises, simply to make you calm more quickly.
Right.
Those are fine. It's the advanced forms where you're really working
Huffing
on,
and puffing.
but yes, where you're trying to achieve that kumbhaka,
Okay.
where that's the danger.
Okay.
Those are the dangerous ones.
Okay. Thank you.
And so the simple ones, there's no problem.
Okay.
I know Swami Swahananda used to practice the closing of the nostrils form and would teach it to anyone who wished to know it.
And there are simple breathing exercises people use for anxiety and things like that, but they are simply to calm your nervous system down, not to achieve any sorts of.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, those are fine.
Okay. Thank you.
The Swami said there's no need to emphasize it. That's the thing. It's simply not, if you do what's needed, what Patanjali suggests or your guru teaches in terms of mantra, visualization, and so on, it will happen naturally.
I think Brother Shankara, Swami Vivekananda also mentions in his Raja Yoga, it's like rhythm of 4, 8, 20 seconds. 20 seconds is very difficult. I know 4 and 8 are much easier. 4, 8, and 12. Now, like
well,
20 seconds.
Even then, he says, yeah, these are not necessary.
Right.
They're just something to do if you want to calm your mind more quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
In How to Know God, the Yoga Aphorisms of Patanjali, Swami Prabhavananda walks you through a pranayama exercise. I've tried it. It was pretty good. I liked it. But he said,
Very good. Okay, thank you, Brahmadas. And then the fourth limb of yoga is pratyahara. Next is pratyahara, or detachment of the mind from objects of sense by not permitting the mind to join itself to the centers of perception in the sense organs. I'm going to repeat that. This is the definition. This is a very accurate definition. Pratyahara is the detachment of the mind from objects of sense by not permitting the mind to join itself to the centers of perception in the sense organs. Remember, the eye, the ear, the skin, the nose, the tongue, these are the receptors. They're not the sense organs. The sense organs are in the chitta, in the mind stuff. And so it isn't just stopping tasting or stopping the feeling of touch, although that happens when you do practice concentration and meditation and withdraw the mind from these things. You lose your sense of your body at some time. Before you are ready to concentrate, you have to practice treating your mind, freeing your mind from attachment to any senses or sense organs. Maharaj, Swami's teacher, told us this: Free your mind when you go to meditate from all thoughts and anxieties and worries that you have in the world. Then begin your meditation. Now, why does he mention things, thoughts and anxieties and worries? Well, these are the things that occupy us, and most of them are generated by the effect of the gunas on the sense organs. And our internal memories, name and form, our mental images, our mental impressions. So it's the effect of the gunas on those that form thoughts, anxieties, and worries. So Maharaj told us this: free your mind when you go to meditate from all thoughts and anxieties and worries that you have in the world. Then begin your meditation. Swamiji Vivekananda gives a very practical lesson for the practice of pratyahara. He says first to sit for some time and let the mind run on. Do not try to control it, only keep watch. Now, this is a very powerful thing, and of course, this is also the beginning of the practice of being the witness. This is the deep secret of this. So Swamiji says, first sit for some time and let the mind run on. Do not try to control it, only keep watch. The mind bubbles up like a monkey jumping about. Let the monkey jump. Let the monkey jump on, jump as much as he can. Simply wait and watch. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, and that is true. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. So give it rein. Many hideous thoughts may come to it. Many hideous thoughts may come into it. You will be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts. But you will find that each day its vagaries are becoming fewer and less violent. Each day it becomes calmer. For the first few months, you will find it will have a great many thoughts. Later, they will have decreased somewhat. In a few more months, you will find there are fewer and fewer. At last, the mind will be in perfect control. But we must practice patiently every day. So notice that there is no willful withdrawing of the mind from the sense organs. There is simply watching what the sense organs and our mental impressions that are left over from our 5 organs of perception and our 5 organs of action have left in the citta, these mental impressions, and how the gunas come and touch them, and they activate, and they do this and they do that, as the Swami says, like a monkey jumping about. No worries, no problem. Simply observe it. This is again sahaja pratyahara. There's no need for being extreme. There's no need for forcing anything. There is only the need for patience and perseverance. So before you begin your meditation, before you begin your practice of contemplation, concentration, and meditation on some specific thing, You simply watch the mind. Simply watch the mind. Now, it used to be that Barbara Brown Taylor would invite the resident minister from here to talk to her classes. Sometimes she would bring them here, sometimes she would bring the resident minister there to her classes at Piedmont College. At one time, before I went for a visit, I sent instructions ahead about watching the mind. And I said that's how we would begin our session, but in the meantime, for them to practice this for some time. When I got there, I was really amazed and gratified to find how much they had enjoyed this. And particularly, I found it interesting, those people who participated in sports, those people who were actively participating in sports, said how beneficial this was to calm them down and improve their sports performance. Why? Because it is the beginning of concentration. When you begin to occupy that witness seat and simply watch your mind, watch your emotions, watch your perceptions, you begin to sense, oh, this is something other than the me of meanness. The meanness, this is a different identity. All of this jumping about, as the Swami said, that isn't me. It's something happening in my presence. And as the Swami pointed out, it is very freeing. You free yourself from much. Now, before we move on, any comments or questions about pratyahara, about what it is, how to begin to attain it, and this business of watching the mind. Any comments or questions?
Good morning, brother.
Good morning.
I just have a little question. What is the book that is explaining in detail this?
It is called How to Know God by Swami Prabhavananda.
Okay.
And it is especially created for us here in the West. And it's his interpretation, translation, and commentary of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. If we just try to read Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, translated directly from the Sanskrit into the English, we'll be hopelessly confused.
Yeah. How to know that? By whom you said?
Swami Prabhavananda.
Okay.
The same person, the same Swami whose collection of talks we're studying under the title Realizing God.
Is this book in the chapel so I can?
Yes, it's in the chapel bookshop. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Next time I go, I'm gonna try that. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
So one of the recent talks I was listening to, Swami Sarvapriyananda's, he sort of compares the practice of leaving the footwear outside before entering the shrine as leaving your thoughts outside. So for me, that has become a image that I use. Try to keep the footwear and say, okay, I'm leaving my thoughts. But obviously, like Swamiji said, it's still, I have to sit for a few minutes and let the thoughts run wild. And it does help. because the thoughts don't like being watched. And then I realized that it's the same thing over and over again. Why am I wasting my time? So that kind of helps redirect my attention.
Well, you know, the mind doesn't like any, in the beginning, doesn't like any attempt to control it, including the watching of the thoughts. It likes to think that it's in control. The left mind, especially. The right mind never has any such thoughts. But when we watch, when we begin to watch, it's interesting that the Swami analogized the thoughts to footwear. They are something that are not of you. Haha. You wear shoes, but the shoes are not you. As Swami Yogatmananda said, I traveled here on an airplane. When I was in the airplane, that was my seat. I didn't want anyone else to sit in that seat. I had reserved that seat. That was my seat for the time that I was on the airplane. But when I finished the trip, I left that seat and never gave it another thought. Over time, you can do this very much with your thoughts. You can see that the technical explanation is that our mind stuff, our chitta, is full of these mental impressions. The gunas, which are the energies of creation, of stability, creation, and revelation, are constantly at work on these mental impressions, constantly touching them and causing them to come to life. There's nothing wrong. It's a perfectly natural process, but it is not the you of you. The you of you is much larger, much more than even that vast store of mental impressions that come from all of what we're told are the lifetimes we have lived. So, as you develop this sense that this is something, all of these feelings, thoughts, and perceptions, there's something happening in my presence. Like a movie I am watching, it's not me. Then there's no question of control anymore as such. You simply sink below all of that into a different realm of being, and all of that continues to go on, but your intention has been directed towards something else, and your attention follows, and therefore your prana follows. And so slowly and slowly, those thoughts, as the Swami said, those thoughts diminish and diminish to the point where, for brief periods, they stop. Kumbhaka. So leaving I love that image of leaving the shoes outside, leaving your thoughts outside, your thoughts, your feelings, your perceptions. The underlying assumption of that metaphor is that they are no more you than your shoes are. Now, if you want a really good, I've said this many times, And some of you have followed on, and I'm not saying this is something you should do. It's just an auspicious thing to do. Jill Bolte Taylor, who is an anatomist, lost all of her left mind functions due to a massive stroke. In recovering her left mind functions over a period of 8 years, she discovered all of these mental impressions and how they get triggered. And she refers to them as, and I love this term, neural loops. Neural loops. You touch it, it does a predictable loop. And so her book, My Stroke of Insight, if you'd like, I'll send you a PDF copy of the book. Just send me an email. I'll send you a PDF copy of the book, or you can buy a copy very inexpensively online. We don't carry that here at the bookstore. It's too easily accessible elsewhere. It is an absolutely gem-like description of what Patanjali refers to as samskaras or vasanas. And it's described in such a way from a Western scientific perspective. Jill Bolte Taylor is a PhD in neuroanatomy, who at the time that this all happened to her was a teacher, a tenured professor at Harvard. So this business of neural loops or mental impressions, and the fact that you can choose to interact with them or not, is very powerful indeed, and really adds to just what's been said here by the Swami. Anything more?
Thank you, Brother Shankara, for the further expounding of the leaving the shoes outside analogy. I got around to reading Jill Bolte Taylor's book just the last couple of days, and found it absolutely inspiring, educational, I mean, everything. It's just a wonderful book.
Well, particularly from your perspective as an MD, you can see the penetrating way she deals with this, and how she explains it, the medical or neuroanatomical aspects of it
Right.
in such simple, straightforward language.
Absolutely. And then the practical guidance she gives towards the end. So it's amazing. I thank you for, I had watched her TED Talk several years back, but the book is just way beyond what the TED Talk offers.
Of course, of course.
But my one question, Brother Shankara,
Yeah.
I like the way you described the three energies. You said stability, creation, and what was the third one?
Revelation.
Revelation. Okay. So would that be sattva, rajas, tamas, or
Stability is tamas. Inertia, stability.
Okay.
Our tendency toward homeostasis is a form of tamas, a positive form of tamas. We need homeostasis, but we mustn't be possessed by it. And homeostasis is not just something of the physical body. The physical body is an artificial distinction that we make. We are one unit, all of which is constantly trying to maintain homeostasis so that it can cope with this very difficult and challenging world in which we live. So when we begin to try to do spiritual practices, this is one of the things we deal with. And Jill Bolte Taylor talks about it, not as homeostasis, but what we have to overcome in her book as well. And so that's tamas. Creation is rajas, projection, creation. And sattva is revelation. Revelation. And this is why the Swami says, it's a few paragraphs back, he says, you mustn't become content because you have some revelation. You must maintain that divine discontent so that you move onward, because we're infinite beings, infinite. And there's no end to what we will discover as we go further and further and further along the path. As Raja Maharaj, Swami Prabhavananda's teacher, also said one time, when Swami Prabhavananda, he was still a boy, Abani, was telling a friend, oh, you can't see the world of spirit with your physical eyes. And Raja Maharaj overheard this conversation and came out and said to Abani, oh, I see you have become omniscient. And he said this in English. He said that in English, and then he said, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. There is no line of demarcation. So there is no line of demarcation. That's why I said this body is a unit. This action and experience suit we have is a unit that has physical, psychic, supersensuous, and then even higher spiritual aspects.
Thank you so much.
Anything else, dears?
I'm glad that the Swami recognizes some of the challenges we're up against when we try to meditate. Like he says, let the mind bubbles up like a monkey jumping about, and many hideous thoughts may come into it. You'll be astonished that it was possible for you to think such thoughts. Those have happened, and I'm glad he sees that, because it comforts me to know that, hey, other people experience that too, not just me.
Well, he himself experienced it when he was a young man.
Right.
Himself as he was. So this, if you want to know more about that, there's a book written about him that has now been published as A Light to the West. That is available in our bookshop. And it is a book put together by his right-hand person for decades. Her name was Pravrajika Anandaprana. She was a nun. She was his amanuensis for decades. And then after her Mahasamadhi, the nun who is in charge of the work in Dallas, Brahmaprana, took it over, did some editing and some additions also, and published it as this book, A Light to the West. So the Swami, when I say he knows whereof he speaks, not only did he experience this himself, but when he first came to the US in 1925, the first thing he did, much to the astonishment of many, he didn't reserve himself and act like some aloof Swami. No, he began to socialize with these Westerners that were members of the congregation, go with them to parties and to burlesque shows and all kinds of things that they did. Why? He like any good communicator, he wanted to know his audience. He wanted to know his audience.
I
And
think
so,
it's safe for him to do that, but not for me, not yet.
well, he had already been given realization by Raja Maharaj. You're right. So, he wanted to know. Well, it isn't your responsibility either, Brahmadas, to deliver lectures. It was his immediate responsibility to do something he'd never done before, and that is deliver lectures. So he
Right,
wanted to know, who is it I'm speaking to?
right. They say you're supposed to get to know your audience when you deliver lectures, so
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
he's
You
doing.
must. You must. So let me say just this one last word about Jill Bolte Taylor. You can still find her online. She is working with people on different projects. And one of the things you'll find is that when she is asked who she is, the first thing she says is, I am a being as big as the universe. And she means it, not from some idea, but from her own experience, as described in the book, and then as further described by these people she talks with and these projects she's involved with. I recommend Jill Bolte Taylor because she makes these spiritual ideas so clear for us as Westerners. So clear. Because they are her personal experience, and she's very skilled as a communicator. Okay, anything else before we read on?
One more thought about the monkey mind and the hideous thoughts. I think those are like the 6 alligators that Sri Ramakrishna talks about.
Yes. We all know those alligators. The 6 alligators, the 8 fetters, all of the things that conspire to keep us imprisoned or to eat us alive. Those 6 alligators. About the alligators and their tendency to eat us alive when we immerse ourselves in the waters of the world. He says, smear your body with the turmeric of devotion, and the alligators cannot touch you, will not touch you. Thank you, Brahmadas. Yes, the mind. The exitless maze of the left mind. Anything else before we read on? Okay. The Swami says, let us get to the main point. What is concentration? This is the 6th limb of yoga, and Patanjali defines it as holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body, or fixing it there on some divine form. If this is not possible in the beginning, then try fixing the attention on a place outside. This also helps. So I'm going to read that again. This is about the 6th limb of yoga, the final limb identified with self-effort. Let us get to the main point. What is concentration? Dharana, the technical term in Sanskrit, dharana. Let us get to the main point. What is concentration? This is the 6th limb of yoga, and Patanjali defines it as holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body, or fixing it there on some divine form. If this is not possible in the beginning, then try fixing the attention on a place outside. That also helps. Now, these centers in the body, Swami Prabhavananda said, the most auspicious for us is to fix our attention on the heart. Whatever we're doing, saying a mantra, visualizing a divine form, as Patanjali suggests, or even singing a song, concentrating on singing a divine song. Do it from and from within the heart. The other centers in the body, as Patanjali describes in the section on powers, the powers that are available to us, psychic powers. Each of the other centers in the body has some powers associated with it. The heart. Now, some research has been done on the heart. We think of the head as the center of our consciousness and our awareness. In fact, the heart exchanges, transmits and transceives 8 times as much radiation all along the spectrum of radiation. The heart transceives 8 times as much as the head. That lets you know where the activity is really going on. And so the spiritual center in the body, center of spiritual consciousness in the body that is the most auspicious, is the heart. Fixing it there on some divine form or divine sound, which is what those mantras and bijas are. And then he says, if this is not possible in the beginning, then try fixing it on a place outside. This also helps. So gazing at a picture of Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother, or Krishna, some image of Krishna, a murti as it's said in Sanskrit, or visualizing a holy mountain, or gazing on a holy mountain, for all of that. So this is what the Swami characterizes as the main point. Let us get to the main point. What is concentration? This is the 6th limb of yoga, and Patanjali defines it as, quote, holding the mind within a center of spiritual consciousness in the body, or fixing it there on some divine form. If this is not possible in the beginning, then try fixing the attention on a place outside. This also helps. Patanjali gives many other ways to concentrate. This is the beauty of this teaching. People have different temperaments, and one method does not apply to everyone. There is no patent medicine. There is a story about a man who was suffering from constipation. When he went to the doctor, he was told to take castor oil. He was cured. Then he became a big doctor in the village. Whoever came to him was given castor oil. Ah, me.
Does that mean regardless of their ailment, they were given?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Regardless of their ailment. So he got confused about, like the castor oil was magic, not just useful for his constipation. So it's getting up toward noon. It's 11:55. I'd like to leave a little time for any final thoughts or questions that you might have. Anything at all about, we've now come to the end, we're coming to the end of the discussion of the self-effort portion. When we learn to concentrate, Patanjali asserts, we slip into meditation. The first 6 limbs are something that you do. The last 2 limbs, meditation and samadhi, liberation, is something that happens to you. So anything at all before we close?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
at the very beginning of our meeting today, you said, I think this was from Swami, whenever you are ready, you will find that God will clear your path.
Yes, was the
Which I
first
thought
that was read.
Really wonderful. And ready was related to clarity of mind and purity of heart.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, I just want to, I know kind of the answer to this, but I just wanted to, you can't get clarity of mind entirely and purity of heart entirely. God has to clear your path all along the way.
Yes, but you're not aware of it. That's the thing. Yes, indeed, that's true. There is only the divine presence. Let us take seriously omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. There is only that. It's all that is doing anything. But when he says that God will clear your path at a certain point, you become aware that that's what's happening. You see it happening. Obstacles simply crumble.
But I think you can see this to a certain extent before you have complete clarity of mind and purity of heart, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that's sort of what I was asking.
But the fact that you're able to even think that thought indicates that there's remarkable clarity of thought and purity of heart. Most people, it would never occur to them. They think they are doing.
Oh, I see, okay.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's as inevitable as it can be given where they are. And at some point, we all come to a desire for greater happiness and greater freedom. At first, we were confused about that, what that means, often when we're young. And so instead of freedom, we practice license, and so on and so forth. Well, as Hafiz says, these are all innocent steps on the path.
Yeah.
So yes, our confusion about who's doing what, if we just return our attention again and again to those 3 big words, omnipresent, nowhere not present, omniscient, nothing that it's all knowledge and all knowing, and omnipotent. The only power that there is the power of that. And the fact that it's manifesting in us as that power, that knowledge, that presence is one of the ways of thinking of its proof that we are that. If we, it's that old, like that old vaudeville saying, Buy the premise, buy the bit. If you buy the 3 O words, then certain conclusions and certain attitudes of mind and spirit follow naturally. Thank you, Janaki. You're right. It is. That's why Ranganathananda says in Divine Grace, you get to a certain point and Krishna says to you, you see, it was me doing it all along. You just thought you were doing it. Anything else, dears?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swam.
Yeah. So somebody had sent me this where Swamiji's interpretative writing about the story of Ramayana, and I'm heavily paraphrasing it. But if we, I think it said that if Sita represents all of us who are kind of kidnapped and imprisoned in a negative environment, Ravana represents the Rajasic aspect, and Hanuman is the guru, and of course Sri Rama is the God, Paramatma. And so Sita, mainly what she did was resisted the negative aspects. Then the guru in form of Hanuman came and encouraged her to keep the faith, and ultimately it was the God who had to come and free her. So in that sense, I mean, our role is, I guess, again, to resist as much as we can the negative in us, and then it's God who's going to come with Guru's help. The God is going to come and really free us. That's sort of what I got from that.
Beautiful, beautiful set of interpretations of the Ramayana. Yes, indeed. Yes, Sita is the divine person as well as the every person.
I'd never heard that before. I didn't know there was a symbolic interpretation of that story. Very much like the Kurukshetra battle, there's symbolic interpretations.
Yes.
Yet Jesus said, resist not evil. I think what he meant by that is like what the Swami said, when the thoughts come, just sit back and observe them and don't try to fight them.
Yes. There's more to it, but we'll take it up another time. About resist not evil. That's a whole big explanation. We'd be here for an hour. Anything else?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes,
I
sir.
really liked what you said today about tamas, because I've had the habit of, like, whenever I've experienced tamas, to feel shame for feeling in that state of awareness.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, well, we mustn't be ashamed for being in any state of awareness. We must not be ashamed. We must not be ashamed. It is something happening in our presence. We are not the doer. We are the witness. So no shame. No shame. No beating yourself up. No self-recrimination. Just think, what I experienced is done with. That was then, this is now. Learn from what you experienced. And as Swami Swahananda would say over and over, what's done is done. Go forward. But by all means, no shame. Thank you, Aaron, and Brahmadas.
Thank you.
Anyone else, dears? You are not bad and wrong. You are not bad and wrong. Nothing about you is bad and wrong. There are aspects of us that we do not want to cooperate with. They are as inevitable as darkness coming when the sun disappears because the horizon is rotated to where there's darkness and not sun anymore. And that also has to do with Jesus is saying, resist not evil. Anything else, dears?
Thank you for being on this Saturday.
Oh, you're more than welcome, dear. I thank you for being with us. This is how we do this. We do this together. Wonderfully, we do not have to do this alone.
Brother Shankara, I have a question. So
Yes,
how do
Katrina.
when you stand back and you look at the thoughts, and let's say, well, you look at the thoughts that we're talking about, the experience, you move beyond it. But how do you deal with the feelings that come with that thought, those thoughts?
Well, they're just another form of thoughts, aren't they? So you observe the feelings as well as the thoughts, and you observe all of the way those feelings have led you to behave in certain instances. And you say, well, that's remarkable. That's probably not the best way forward for me, so I won't do that anymore. And then when we do it again, because we have a habit, we make that same resolve again. We observe it. We see what happens. As Swami Vivekananda said, we fall 1,000 times. We rise 1,001 times. And there is no possibility whatsoever of progress if we're afraid to look at what we've done and then go forward. And inevitably, we will make mistakes. We will not get it right the first time. This is a very difficult skateboard to ride, this skateboard of spiritual life. We're not going to learn it, how to ride it, without skinning our knees and bloodying our noses. But if you go on YouTube and you watch these 14, 15-year-old children and the miracles they're performing on their skateboards, you think all I have to do is practice as much as they have practiced, and I will become as skillful as that.
Okay, thank you.
And so don't, the very last thing in the world you should do, Katrina, is have any anxiety or worries about these things. They come, they go. They are inevitable. All right. As we part company today, I'll share this with you. We share this dream of manyness Let us enjoy the companionship. You know for whom the bell tolls. Hear it as my love for thee. We share this dream of manyness. Let us enjoy the companionship. You know for whom the bell tolls. Hear it as my love for thee. Any final thought from anyone?
Where does that quote come from?
That tanka that was just read,
Yes.
that arose here. In other words, I wrote it.
Very
Beautiful,
nice.
Brother Shankara. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you for
thank
that.
you.
So, Jai, Jai, Jai. If you want to find it, it's on my Facebook page. That tanka. Tanka is a formal form of Japanese poetry. 5 lines, 5 beats, 7 beats, 5 beats, 7 beats, 7 beats. 31 beats or syllables. In 5 lines. And that, as a form, it's like a vaudeville act. The first 3 lines are the setup, the last 2 lines are the payoff. Ah, me. So, Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Presence. So, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we will have a little fun with something called the equations of Maya. The equations of Maya. How we get a universe out of inertia, electricity, and gravity. The three gunas: inertia, tamas; electricity, rajas; and gravity, sattva. How we get a universe out of this, which John Dobson, the wonderful scientist and Vedanta philosopher and student of human nature, John Dobson wrote a paper called The Equations of Maya. So that's what we'll talk about tomorrow morning at 11.
Thank you, Brother.
Our last discussion of Jnana Yoga for this
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you, brother.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
today you've given me so many practical ways to understand the gunas. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to contemplate the gunas, and the assertion by Kapila, who was Krishna. Krishna says clearly in the Gita, I was Kapila. It is an explanation of how everything comes to be. And this is John Dobson's wonderful explanation of the equations of Maya. Gives us an even greater insight into this incredible, truly incredible fabric of which we are an inextricable part. We are that. We are that. So Until next time, dears, may you be safe, healthy, cheerful, and have peace of mind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om. See you later.
Hariom. Thank you.